Hello, I'm Fareedah Ganiyu, a final year student majoring in sociology in the Department of Sociology and Criminology. I'm here with Dr. Mara-fridell, an assistant professor at the Department of Sociology and Criminology. Dr. Fridell, could you please introduce yourself and your research focus?
So my name is Dr. mara-fridell, and I'm a sociologist. I research comparative inequality, so inequality outcomes and policies that contribute to inequality across regions. And I bring together that research with research into changes in the history of ideas, sociological theory, but as well changes in the history of ideas around what is science, and biological research and theory. And I bring those two forms of research together, history of ideas and research into comparative inequality, that is contextualized for the different countries' histories or regions' histories. I bring those together, and it's to answer what I think is a really important question for our time, which is why are some of our problems around inequality, why do they keep growing, right? And why is democracy declining? And what do we need to do to go deeper, right? Not solving our problems in the same way we've been doing for, say, the past 80, 50 years, but thinking about going deeper into history and across countries to learn and think about how we can advance toward less inequality, fewer inequality problems, and that includes climate crisis. It includes things like homelessness. It includes things like the crush on women who are trying to work but can't find daycare. There are all sorts of problems that we can think of as inequality problems. Yeah, so inequality is based a lot in not recognizing what people contribute. I call it terra nullius, the sort of terra nullius approach, where people make money and come to exert power over other people and build inequality by forwarding ideology that disappears or makes invisible all the work nature is doing, all the work that women are doing, all the work that people of color, that colonized people are doing. It makes that all invisible. And the point of that terra nullius politics is so somebody can take that work as their own private asset and charge other people access to it, or make money off of it in other ways, right? And so this is an ancient tradition, especially within the common law societies, and it really builds up inequality, but at the same time, it makes invisible all this work and contribution that people are doing, and really creates imbalanced society. That where we are, despite all our best efforts and our good intentions, we're, by not addressing that fundamental dynamic, we are just recreating and expanding and deepening inequality and our incapacity to see each other's contributions.
How do you see your research contributing to the understanding of contemporary societal issues such as systemic inequality and social justice?
So I approach systemic inequality and social justice through the lens of, first I try to do a contextualized comparative approach. So I'm trying to understand inequality by looking at different instances of inequality and putting that in context. How does inequality get built? How did periods of relative equality get built up themselves, and I'm looking at that including in the social sciences, in the sciences in particular, in biology. I have a background in both biology and in the humanities as well as the social sciences. And so trying to look at similar pressures that these fields were put under in periods in which maybe equality was expanding, but there was a lot of nervousness around that. So, for example, the post-war period and the Cold War period, and connecting that back to longer trends in theory, right, and in philosophy and ideology, how those develop over time. Also in relation to politics, right? Movements around politics, how the state plays a role in that, how social movements play a role, how the expansion of asset coding in law, to use Katharina P. Storr's term, plays a role in advancing inequality, that context of inequality that creates pressure for a shift in thought toward a more toward more inegalitarian ideas that can accompany inequality.
Could you discuss any recent developments in your field that you believe are particularly significant in addressing current global challenges?
Yeah. So taking it to the work that I am doing, bringing together interdisciplinary research, so advancements in organicist processual biology and the theory that emerges from that, bringing that together with research that's going on across different disciplines, but highly focused in the social sciences, but bringing together the humanities as well, because I think we can learn as well from stories, and the humanities are great at that, and they've got great interpretive skills. So bringing that together with social scientific literacies in quantitative analysis, for studying and learning more in that contextualized comparative way about inequality around the world and over time, and why that really matters. And we see through that research that it matters because we're decentering and kind of losing the plot we've been over the past 80 years on notions that arose in the 18th century centering development, human development, life as developmental and innovative and agential for thriving, including on that individual level. Bringing that kind of resurgent biological perspective into informing sociology that has come to reduce our capacity to understanding humans as life, that develop, that we're agents, that we're innovative. So bringing that perspective into sociology, working across these other disciplines to study the problem of inequality. One of the things that the international community that I would consider myself part of, that's working on problems of inequality and this decentering of human development, regional development, and economic development based in human development, one of the things that we're trying to do in our community, our research community and theory community, is highlight that democratic reforms, democratic changes, democratic institutions, ideas, and dispositions that we hold in us are not really robust. They haven't really been shown to be robust over the past 100 years or 80 years without going global, without going international. So this research that I'm doing, trying to bridge disciplines and come back to sociology and have us, I think, regain some perspective that we've lost as sociologists about what our unique contribution is. It's not just observing experience and reporting on that, but much like earlier sociologists like W.E.B. Du Bois, like Lester Ward, like Charlotte Perkins Gilman, what those earlier sociologists were doing is they were moving beyond just the experiential and the reporting of the experiential to doing that comparative work, looking at inequality, looking how it differentially impacts people, and connecting that in a kind of global research community to address inequality in the ways in which it actually works, which is international. So rebuilding capacity we'd like to contribute both policy and ideas to helping people recognize that to rebuild democracy, we have to work transnationally. And that means we have to regain some capacities for organizing. Sociologists have started to do more work on that, like what skills have we lost in terms of everyday people being able to organize, capacities for communication, capacities for quantitative literacy, so we know when we're being fooled by statistics, we don't just submit to experts, so that we can organize, communicate, innovate across borders. The ways in which very anti-democratic billionaires and corporations have been working across borders for decades and decades.
In what ways do you believe your findings can influence public policy or community practice related to your area of expertise?
So different things that I take my view on inequality and my view on social justice, and I try to apply them to working with communities. So for example, going way back in the day, I worked with the Edwacton Dakota community in southeastern Minnesota to look at the ways in which the inequality in colonial relations made them vulnerable to being saddled with nuclear waste in a part of the world in which it could be geographically hidden, right? But as well hidden by colonial relations. And then coming up through subsequent studies that I've undertaken with communities, including women in Manitoba, helping them, working with the now defunct organization Unpack, which is a feminist organization that worked with women across that urban-rural divide to help them build up their political capacities, their economic capacities. A project that I'm working on right now, I'm working on with a GPE student, so working a little bit across disciplines there, although it's a student that I've had in sociology courses. And we're working with an organization that's originally based in Ontario. They've been helping provinces organize the anti-SLAPP lawsuit legislation project. And that project is about helping community organizations, helping environmentalist community organizations be able to express democratic ideas or ideas that can help organize society to address climate crisis. And we can kind of see those provinces experience with that anti-SLAPP legislation. It's pretty new, but the ways in which it does help environmental organizations continue to do their work and try to help society, try to express that voice in society that would, that recognizes the need to address climate crises and not be shut down, silenced, and shut off through lawfare, right? Which is what the SLAPP lawsuits are. And so we're working on taking that research and putting it together for the Manitoba government so they can learn from what other provinces have done and potentially help Manitobans to continue to try to organize and do something about environmental climate crisis.
In your research on social reproduction and inequality, what are some key factors that you believe penetrate these issues in today's world?
Social reproduction, I think it's a resurgent area of research, particularly in theory. It took a little hit for a few decades, and I think it's coming roaring back. There are a lot of feminists around the world who are coming together, meeting, and trying to get a research agenda started again. And so they're looking at things like reconsidering why we have such a hard time in our societies caring for the elderly, for children, recognizing women's contribution to society, the value that we are creating, not the immediately monetizable products that we're making, but the value that we're contributing by caring for others and helping humans develop. Right? In the way we structure our economy, there are forms of work that are not monetized, and then that means they're not assigned value, and we forget that we rely on them and that they're actually creating value, even if they're not being paid.
What advice would you give to students and/or young researchers who aspire to make a meaningful contribution in the field of sociology and criminology?
Yeah, so I have so many students doing so many brilliant projects, and for example, I teach the honors course, and it's just one of my favorite things to do because students in that course really learn to put together all these, the kind of science, classical scientific skills of sociology, those quantitative skills, the capacity to find top quality information, work with librarians, bringing that together and doing literature reviews so that they understand so that they're really bringing into their own, expanding their own knowledge about some of the best ideas and some of the most cutting edge ideas out there in their area of interest, and applying them to building a research project that can contribute to the community of scholars and the larger community's knowledge about how the world works and what needs to be done next, and what the potentials are. So that these students can develop their own careers in relationship to the needs of the communities that they love and feel invested in and value. So If I'm giving advice to students, sometimes it has to do with, this is to do big work. We can do hard things. And to do big work like this, we're here at the University of Manitoba, and we're here in arts, we're here in sociology. I'm here as an honors prof to help students develop those skills, to work with other profs who are working in their area of passion. And together we support those students to really advance their skills, their expertise, their research experience, and their capacity to convey knowledge. So they're supported, and part of that, a big project, like say the year-long honors thesis research project, part of that is even emotional support and learning emotional regulation. Part of it's intellectual growth, part of it's skills growth, but part of it is realizing that a discipline or a department is a community that is there to support your development.